Hello, I'm Elise Vance, the author of the channel Borrowed Lives, and I offer you fascinating stories. Like and subscribe to my channel.
Our entire family had spent months coordinating a luxury sailing expedition across the Mediterranean. But the moment my husband's childhood neighbor, Chloe, found out, she broke into tears and begged to be included. Without hesitating for a single second, Julian canceled my VIP cabin reservation and handed it over to her. Instead, he arranged for me to travel as a deckhand on a noisy, rusted cargo ferry that would take 4 days to reach the archipelago. I looked over at my in-laws, expecting someone to speak up, but to my utter disbelief, every single one of them nodded in agreement with Julian's decision. So, I offered no resistance. I took the paper pass for the freighter and headed for the eastern port. What they didn't expect was that I wouldn't just meet them at the resort. I vanished for 3 full months, sending the entire household into absolute panic. It was extremely rare for my husband to take extended leave from his firm. That was why our family had decided to organize this massive oceanic getaway. I was the one who had started planning it 6 months prior, researching coastal towns, managing logistics, securing private charter docks, and booking all accommodation. Because everyone else in the household was completely passive, I took charge of the vessel rentals, private villas, dining reservations, and shore excursions. I didn't mind the workload. I genuinely believed it would be worth every ounce of effort as long as everyone enjoyed themselves. Cabin spots were notoriously difficult to secure during peak season, so I had locked in our reservations early. When my sister-in-law mentioned she had never experienced a private mega-yacht suite, I even paid out of my own pocket to upgrade the entire family to executive staterooms. Just 2 days before we were scheduled to set sail, Julian casually pulled me aside in the study and said, "Chloe heard about the voyage and really wants to join us. The luxury yacht is fully booked, so you'll have to take the industrial ferry across the strait. I've already booked your passage." He forwarded a digital confirmation for the cargo boat to my phone. "What is the meaning of this?" I asked, staring at the screen in complete shock. "This was planned as an exclusive family retreat, and now you're inviting Chloe? Chloe really wants to come, so naturally I have to bring her along," Julian replied coldly. I was furious. "When my own cousin asked to tag along last month, you were crystal clear. You said this was strictly family, and you refused to bring outside guests. Now that Chloe snaps her fingers, you instantly cave. Chloe and your cousin are completely different," he snapped back. "We grew up in the same house. She's practically family." I scoffed bitterly. "I bought those yacht tickets months ago with my own accounts. Why on earth am I the one being exiled to a freighter?" "There were no vacant suites left on the vessel," Julian shrugged, entirely indifferent to my frustration. "So I canceled your ticket, refunded the balance, and used it for Chloe's cabin. The only transport left with open space was the sea freighter." I glanced at the electronic pass he had sent. It was for a 4-day bare-deck pass with no private sleeping quarters. "So let me get this straight. You bought Chloe an executive stateroom while forcing me to sleep on a wooden bench on a cargo vessel for 4 days?" He smirked. "Didn't you once say you loved raw, authentic sea voyages? Consider this your ultimate maritime adventure." I looked toward the doorway where my in-laws had gathered. My father-in-law quickly averted his gaze, pretending to inspect his phone. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, stepped forward with a patronizing smile. "Victoria, Chloe, and Julian have been inseparable since they were toddlers. They have years of catching up to do. It only makes sense for them to share the VIP deck. Just bear with it. We'll meet you at the island." My teenage sister-in-law, Sienna, chimed in from the hallway. "Seriously, Tori, Chloe has a delicate constitution. There's no way she could survive a rusty cargo ship. You're tough. You run marathons. You can handle the rough conditions." I laughed, the sound hollow and sharp. "Who is actually the wife in this family? It's starting to look like Chloe is your real daughter-in-law." Julian frowned, his tone scolding. "It's just a boat ride. Stop making a scene. Chloe is practically blood. It's our duty to make sure she's comfortable. Can you be gracious for once?" Right on cue, the front gate buzzed. Sienna sprinted to open the heavy oak doors. "Chloe, you made it." Sienna practically tackled her, dragging 3 massive designer trunks into the foyer. "Oh my God, I missed you so much." Honestly, if you hadn't moved to Europe, you totally would have married Julian and we'd be real sisters. Eleanor grabbed Chloe's hands, her eyes shining. Exactly. I've always said you two were soulmates. In my heart, you've always been the true lady of this house. No one else compares. They said these things loudly, openly, without a single ounce of shame. At that exact moment, the last shred of warmth I held for the Vance family evaporated. While Julian and Chloe had been childhood sweethearts, the moment the Vance estate faced bankruptcy, she had fled to Milan. It was me who had stepped in and liquidated my assets to clear their $800,000 corporate lien. Julian had called it true love back then. Now, the truth was blindingly clear. I wasn't his wife. I was their financial bailout. I had bled myself dry for these people. I had practically raised Sienna for the past 6 years, managing her boarding school fees, hiring her tutors, and driving her to equestrian practice. Furthermore, I gave my in-laws a monthly allowance of $15,000 and funded the estate staff. Instead of feeling like a respected partner, I realized I was just a glorified, self-funding estate manager. Chloe strolled up to me with a sickeningly sweet smile. I am so sorry, Victoria. If I hadn't tagged along, you wouldn't have been banished to the cargo hold. I offered to take it, but Julian was terrified I'd be surrounded by rough dockworkers. So, thanks for taking one for the team. Sienna giggled. Victoria is practically a general. She'll scare those sailors into mopping the decks for her. Seeing the ice in my eyes, Julian tried to pivot. Look, it's the only fix. Tell you what, go ahead and buy that designer watch you wanted last week. I crossed my arms. Sure. It's $20,000. Julian choked. That is absurdly expensive. Don't be greedy, he snapped. I smirked. Since when do I need your permission to spend my own money? What is your take-home pay again? His face flushed red. His junior architect salary barely brought in $4,000 a month, while my tech firm netted me over $150,000. I bought this $3 million mansion. If they wanted Chloe so badly, they could have her, and my checkbook would be leaving with me. Victoria, start dinner. Chloe is starving, Eleanor barked from the sofa. I smiled at Chloe. You must really miss Eleanor's famous cooking. I turned to my mother-in-law. Eleanor, shouldn't you be the one cooking a welcome feast for your beloved Chloe? I sat down in an armchair and picked up a tablet. Julian hissed, my mother has terrible joints. Get up and cook. Feigning shock, I gasped. Eleanor, your joints are failing? Is it serious? Eleanor glared, her face red. I am perfectly fine. Stop trying to jinx me. Then why refuse to cook for your soulmate daughter-in-law? I asked casually. Looking completely trapped, Eleanor marched into the kitchen and spent the next 3 hours laboring over the stove. When dinner was finally served, Sienna immediately pulled Chloe into my head-of-the-table seat. Tori, Chloe is our guest of honor. You don't mind sitting on the stool near the pantry, right? Eleanor handed me a small bowl. If the table is too crowded, why don't you eat in the kitchen? And make sure to wipe down the counters while you're in there. I was being exiled from my own dining table in a house I paid for. No need. Enjoy your meal, I said flatly, standing up. My colleagues invited me out for a seafood dinner. Julian looked infuriated. We sail out tomorrow morning. Haven't you packed all our trunks yet? Don't you have hands? Pack them yourself, I retorted. Leaving him speechless, I walked out. I treated myself to an exquisite 5-star dinner at an upscale waterfront restaurant, indulging in fine wine, caviar, and fresh lobster. With my own fortune, I could dine wherever I pleased. I stayed up past 1 a.m. When I returned, the mansion was pitch black. No one had called or texted. They had all gone to sleep without giving me a single thought. I made my way into the master bedroom in the dark, but as I sat on the edge of the mattress, a sharp, dramatic scream echoed through the room. I flipped on the lights to find Chloe lying on my side of the bed. My blood boiled. Without hesitation, I reached out and slapped her across the face. Chloe burst into tears, and Julian bolted upright beside her, shielding her. Are you insane? Why did you hit Chloe? We were just talking and fell asleep accidentally. Accidentally ended up in my bed together? I laughed coldly. We were waiting for you. Julian thundered. You were out so late, so Chloe stayed to keep me company. We fell asleep chatting. It's completely innocent. Then why didn't you call me? Too busy playing house? I spat. Get out of my room. Now. Chloe whimpered, clutching her cheek. Julian, it hurts so much. Julian gave me a look of pure hatred. I'll get you an ice pack, Chloe. Come on. The moment they left, I locked the heavy doors, stripped the bed sheets, put on noise-canceling headphones, and fell into a deep, uninterrupted sleep. The next morning, Julian hammered on the door, practically shaking the frame. What was that stunt last night? I knocked for 20 minutes. You woke up my parents. I opened the door and deadpanned. I did it on purpose. I thought I'd give you two some privacy. You should be thanking me. Julian looked exasperated. Are you out of your mind, Victoria? She's just a friend. You're my wife. Oh, so you still remember I'm your wife? I thought once Chloe arrived, I became invisible. Chloe stepped forward, playing the fragile peacemaker. Please don't fight because of me. Victoria, I'd feel terrible if my presence ruined your marriage. Look how understanding Chloe is, Julian scoffed. Unlike your petty, vindictive attitude. Eleanor chimed in, locking your husband out of his own room? Unacceptable. But we'll overlook it because we're leaving for the harbor. Sienna laughed. Tori, with a temper like that, Julian might just replace you. Seeing Chloe's smug, Victoria's smile, I didn't say another word. Julian gestured toward the foyer, where 8 massive, heavy trunks were stacked. All right, time to move. Victoria, you take the luggage. Since you're taking the industrial freighter, it's easier for you to haul it. That way we don't exceed the yacht's weight limits. I looked at the 860-pound trunks and smiled. Sure. You guys go ahead to the docks. I'll handle it. The second their taxi pulled away toward the marina, I didn't drag a single bag. Instead, I called a local commercial freight disposal service. When the clearance crew arrived, the supervisor looked bewildered. Ma'am, these are custom Italian leather trunks. Are you sure you want these cleared? Everything inside is discarded material, I said calmly. Keep what you want, scrap the rest. I handed him a stack of bills for the rush fee, and within 20 minutes, every piece of their wardrobe, jewelry, and personal gear was loaded into the back of an industrial crusher van. Next, I dialed my corporate attorney to begin drafting immediate divorce papers. Finally, I booked myself a luxury executive cabin on a private high-speed catamaran headed west to the main archipelago. I was relaxing on the leather lounge of the catamaran, sipping chilled champagne as the ocean breeze brushed past when my phone buzzed. It was Julian. Victoria, the marina office says there is no reservation under our name for the private villa. Send me the confirmation code right now. Oh, I forgot to mention, I said smoothly. I canceled it. What do you mean you canceled it? Julian screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. I canceled the island villa, I repeated. And the private dock charter. And the 5-star catering, the jet ski rentals, the spa passes, the private island helicopter tours, and the daily chauffeur. Silence gripped the line for 3 full seconds, followed by background chaos. Sienna was screeching, Eleanor was yelling at the dockmaster, and Chloe's frantic voice was floating through the noise. Are you completely out of your mind? Julian roared. Send the booking details now. Why? I chuckled, watching the shoreline recede. You told me Chloe was closer than family. Since she took my place on the trip, she can handle the logistics. Victoria, we are standing on the pier with no place to stay. Try the fishing docks, I said coldly. And don't call me again. I hung up. Over the next 2 hours, my phone exploded with 40 missed calls and dozens of furious texts. I blocked Julian, Eleanor, and Sienna one by one, leaving only my lawyer's line open. Before I blocked Julian's main number, I sent him a single photograph, the front page of the drafted divorce filing, followed by a short message. Since you wanted Chloe to have my seat, she can have the bill too. Then came the frantic texts about their missing luggage. Julian, where are our trunks? The dock authority says they never arrived. Victoria, I handled them. You asked me to take care of the heavy lifting because I was taking the freight route. Julian, what did you do with our stuff? Victoria, I paid a disposal crew to give them a permanent departure. Hope Chloe enjoys her Bear Deck experience. Julian called immediately. I answered, leaning back against my velvet headrest. Did you actually destroy our clothes? He wailed. Chloe's frantic crying echoed in the background, her limited edition designer gowns, her diamond accessories, all gone. You trusted me with your luggage more than you trusted me with my dignity, I replied. Enjoy your vacation. I turned off the phone entirely. By the second night, the Vance family was getting a harsh lesson in peak season economics. With no reservations, no luggage, and Julian's modest credit card limit, they were forced into a rundown motel miles away from the coast. His $4,000 salary couldn't even cover a single night at the luxury resort I had originally booked. On the third day of my solo journey, while walking along the cliffs of a secluded coastal town, I met Marcus Sterling. I was holding my digital camera when a gust of wind caught my scarf, dropping it near his feet. He picked it up, handing it back with a composed, respectful smile. Traveling alone? I was supposed to be with family, I said, looking out at the endless blue horizon. Turns out I travel much better without dead weight. Marcus smiled, his eyes sharp and observant. He was a prominent venture capitalist, effortlessly confident, and completely devoid of the fragile ego Julian possessed. I like people who know exactly which seat they belong in, Marcus said softly. We ended up having coffee by the bay. He didn't pry into my past, nor did he offer patronizing pity. He simply treated me as an equal, something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Over the next 3 months, I traveled through the coastal cities of Europe, reclaiming every piece of myself that I had sacrificed for the Vance family. I slept until noon, dined at fine restaurants, and brought the luxury watch Julian had tried to forbid me from buying. While lounging in oceanside cafes, I worked remotely with my legal team, pulling bank statements, house deeds, wire transfers, and receipts. I documented every single dollar I had poured into the Vance estate, the $800,000 debt repayment, the monthly $15,000 allowances, Sienna's tuition payments, and the deed to the $3 million mansion, which was registered solely in my name. Meanwhile, Julian's messages transformed from angry demands to desperate pleas. Julian, Victoria, please answer. My mother's blood pressure is spiking. Sienna needs her school fees paid. Chloe didn't mean any harm. Please come back so we can fix this. I ignored almost all of them, occasionally sending short, icy replies. You chose a guest over your wife. Enjoy the guest. Chloe had initially posted carefully edited photos on social media to make the ruined trip look glamorous. A flower pot at the cheap motel, a blurry view of the ocean. But by the second week, the posts stopped entirely. I later found out why. Chloe's European bank accounts were completely maxed out. She hadn't returned to Julian out of nostalgic love. She had come back because she heard rumors that the Vance family was living in luxury again. She thought Julian had made it big. She had no idea that his wife was the sole engine behind their entire lifestyle. When their miserable, luggage-less trip finally ended, the Vance family took a taxi back to my mansion, exhausted, broke, and furious. But when they arrived at the front gates, their keys didn't work. The heavy iron locks had been completely replaced. A formal legal notice was posted on the gate. Unauthorized occupants will be prosecuted for trespassing. Their remaining personal items had been packed by professional movers and placed in a rented storage unit. Eleanor screamed so loudly the neighbors came out to watch. Father-in-law pounded his fists against the iron bars. Sienna sat on the curb, sobbing in despair, while Chloe stood by her 2 cheap plastic duffel bags, staring at the estate in sheer disbelief. Julian called me 19 times. When I finally answered, he blew up. How dare you change the locks on our home? It's not our home, Julian. It's my home. Bought and paid for with my money before we ever signed a marriage certificate, I said smoothly. My parents have nowhere to go, he yelled. You said Chloe was practically family. Go stay with her. Victoria, stop this madness. Come home. I am home, I replied. You're the one standing on the street. I hung up. For the next 2 weeks, the entire Vance family was forced to pack into a tiny, 2-bedroom apartment that Julian's modest salary could barely cover. There was no maid, no private chef, no monthly allowance, and no Victoria to fix their problems. Eleanor had to learn the price of groceries for the first time in years. Father-in-law had to pay utility bills. And Sienna quickly realized that Chloe didn't care about her exams, her allergies, or her extracurriculars. Chloe didn't cook, didn't clean, and threw a fit every time the budget ran tight. One evening, Sienna called me, weeping hysterically. "Tori, my school activity fees were due today, and my card was declined. They won't let me go on the debate trip." "Ask your parents," I said quietly. "But you've always handled everything," she sobbed. "I'm only 16. Are you really going to punish me like this?" "I'm not punishing you, Sienna. I'm simply returning you to the family that taught you to treat me like a servant." There was a long, painful silence on the line. I really missed you," she whispered. I closed my eyes, feeling a slight sting in my heart, but I held my ground. "Goodbye, Sienna." When I finally returned to the city after 3 months, I was a completely transformed woman. My hair was styled shorter. I wore an immaculate tailored suit, and I walked with an unshakable air of confidence. Julian was waiting outside my office building with a pathetic bouquet of cheap grocery store flowers. He looked haggard, stress lines etched deep into his face. "Victoria," he breathed, stepping forward to embrace me. I held up a hand, stopping him dead in his tracks. "Don't touch me. You look incredible," he stamed, lowering the wilted flowers. "Please, can we just talk? My parents want to set up a family dinner at a restaurant. They want to resolve everything." "A family dinner?" I scoffed. "Fine, let's have a family dinner." That evening, the Vance elders arranged a private dining room at a high-end establishment. They had invited distant relatives, clearly hoping that public pressure and family hierarchy would force me into stepping back into my role as the dutiful, submissive wife. Father-in-law sat at the head of the table, attempting to look stern, while Eleanor sat beside him with a fake, forced smile. Chloe sat near the edge, dressed in a plain, inexpensive dress, looking stripped of all her former arrogance. Sienna stared silently at her hands. I walked into the private room, but I didn't come alone. My senior divorce attorney, carrying a thick leather briefcase, walked in right beside me. Julian gasped. "Victoria, why did you bring a lawyer to a family dinner?" "Because your family constantly mistakes extortion for affection," I said coolly, taking a seat at the center of the table. Father-in-law slammed his palm onto the table. "Enough of this disrespect. A woman who earns a little money thinks she can step on her husband's neck. In my day, a proper daughter-in-law honored her elders, served her household, and didn't lock her family out on the street." My lawyer didn't say a word. He simply opened his briefcase and laid out a series of laminated documents on the Lazy Susan, spinning it around for the entire table to see. First was the paper ticket for the 4-day cargo freighter, juxtaposed right next to Chloe's executive yacht suite receipt. Then came the itemized bank records showing $800,000 in corporate debt clearance, followed by 5 years of monthly $15,000 allowance transfers to Eleanor and father-in-law. The distant relatives at the table leaned in, gasping as they read the numbers. For 5 years, I paid over $2 million for the privilege of being called family, I announced, my voice echoing clearly in the room. And the moment Chloe snapped her fingers, you stripped me of my seat, forced me onto a freighter, and let her sleep in my bed. Eleanor's face turned white. "Victoria, I always loved you like a daughter. You handed me a bowl and told me to go eat on a stool in the pantry while Chloe sat at the head of my table." I replied without a trace of emotion. "Is that how you treat a daughter?" Father-in-law tried to bluster his way out. "So what? A wife supporting her husband's family is her natural duty." My lawyer tapped an audio file on his phone and set it on the table. Father-in-law's voice blared through the speakers. A daughter-in-law like her needs to be beaten into submission. If she were standing in front of me right now, I'd teach her a lesson with my fists. The private dining room went dead silent. The distant relatives looked at father-in-law with utter disgust, pulling their chairs slightly away from him. His face flushed a dark, humiliated purple. "Good thing I'm resigning from the position," I said with a razor-thin smile. Next, my lawyer slid forward a set of printed text message logs retrieved from Chloe's old messaging apps. It was a chat between Chloe and a friend in Europe. Chloe, Julian's family is rich again. His wife pays for literally everything, but if I play my cards right and act fragile, I can easily squeeze her out and take over. Julian stared at the printout, his eyes wide with shock. He turned slowly toward Chloe. You used me? Chloe panicked, reaching for his hand. Julian, no, that's not what I meant. You didn't love Julian, I interrupted, looking straight at Chloe. You just loved the executive stage room. Julian was just the fool sitting next to it. Someone at the end of the table choked on their wine. Julian pulled his arm away from Chloe as if her touch burned him. Sienna broke down in tears, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. Tori, I'm so sorry. I looked at her, and for a second, my chest tightened. I raised you for 6 years, Sienna. I knew your allergy list by heart. I knew your school fears. I knew every grade you received. And yet, you laughed when they gave my seat to a stranger. I was stupid. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I forgive you, I said softly. But the free ride is over. Julian felt his knees beside my chair, completely unconcerned with the crowd of relatives watching. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Victoria, please. I was blind. I forgot everything you did for us. Give me one more chance. I'll change, I swear I'll change. You didn't forget what I did for you, Julian, I said, looking down at him without a shred of pity. You remembered every single time you needed money. You only forgot when it was time to show me respect. My attorney has the final divorce decree. Sign it. His hand trembled violently as he took the pen, signing his name on the dotted line. The public dinner accomplished exactly what the Vance family had hoped, except the outcome was their complete social destruction. Within weeks, news of their greed and humiliation spread throughout their social circles. Julian's $4,000 architect salary became his sole reality. Rent, basic groceries, utilities, and debt payments pressed down on him until his ego was completely crushed under the weight of real life. Chloe lasted exactly 7 days in Julian's cramped, rented apartment. Without my fortune funding the lifestyle, she had zero interest in Julian's modest life, zero patience for Eleanor's nagging, and zero desire to stick around. She packed her duffel bags and vanished, leaving Julian with nothing. A week after the final divorce papers were filed, Sienna came to my private residence alone. She stood outside the iron gate in her school uniform, looking small and deeply remorseful. I opened the gate halfway. No money, no errands, no free passes. I know, she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. I didn't come for money. I just wanted to apologize without my mother telling me what to say. You were the only real family I ever had. I looked at her for a long moment, then opened the gate a bit wider. Have you eaten lunch yet? She shook her head, a watery, relieved smile breaking through her tears. A month later, I sold the mansion and bought a sleek, light-filled penthouse overlooking the bay, a place where no one would ever order me to eat in the kitchen. I decided to take another journey across the coast. This time, as I walked onto the boarding deck of a luxury ocean liner, holding my first-class ticket, Marcus Sterling was waiting near the railing with 2 iced coffees. No freight ships this time, he asked, a warm smile in his eyes. Never again, I smiled back, taking the cup. I'm done letting people assign me to the hard seats. Mind if I walk beside you? Marcus asked softly, gesturing toward the open deck. Not ahead, not behind. Just beside. I looked at him, then out at the endless, clear blue horizon. For years, I had carried everyone else's baggage, debts, and pride. Now, I carried only my own future. I'd like that, I said. And as the ship set sail, leaving the harbor far behind, I knew I had finally arrived at the destination I truly deserved.